Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns. As a shocking amount of fentanyl continues to pour into the United States, a new Washington Post investigation focuses on the political mistakes from recent administrations in dealing with this epidemic. Headlined, "Cause of Death: Washington faltered as fentanyl gripped America," is the first in a 7-part series on this crisis. In the piece, the authors detail how recent presidential administrations have failed to slow down the devastating impact of fentanyl on Americans. Nick Miroff is one of those authors of this story and joins me now. He's an immigration reporter for the Washington Post. Nick, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here and for your reporting. I encourage viewers to go back and read it. What was striking to me here is that you reported that essentially this is a crisis and an issue that has spanned a couple of administrations. What exactly has gone wrong? What have they failed to do?
Well, really, it's been an accumulation of failures and missteps that go all the way back to the George W. Bush administration, but have really gotten worse in recent years. And it's the result of the U.S. institutions that are designed to confront illegal narcotics, like the DEA, the Department of Homeland Security at the border, as well as the White House drug czar. All of these offices have been slow to respond to this growing catastrophe. And what we've seen in the last 2 years is just an explosion in the amount of fentanyl coming into the country, as well as a huge increase in the number of fatal overdoses.
And Nick, you mentioned that in your reporting that the HHS isn't tracking the rise in fentanyl here, and you write that the government is essentially driving blind when it comes to this. There was a notable quote here from John Walters, who served as the drug czar in the Clinton and Bush administrations, and he said this is like tracking the epidemic by visiting cemeteries. Our drug control strategy is an embarrassment, and it doesn't begin to propose a way of reversing this problem. So how can the federal government tackle this issue if it can't seem to actually get its arms around it?
Yeah, I mean, this is a story of the most lethal narcotics crisis in U.S. history. And instead of rising to meet the challenge, sadly, what we've seen is that these institutions have come up short. I think people are starting to wake up to the gravity of this crisis, of this epidemic. We have seen a new commitment from the Biden administration, particularly at the DEA, to really make fentanyl a focus of its efforts. I think, but I think we're in a time right now when all of these institutions are catching up. They've realized that this is such an urgent threat, but we're behind. It's going to take several years, and right now there isn't much of a light at the end of the tunnel. And almost everyone we spoke to for this investigative series feels that the matter is going to get worse before it could get better.
And you mentioned the DEA. You also mentioned in your report that there are about 800 vacancies there. Why is this agency having so much trouble filling these posts? Is it a problem of recruitment?
Well, there's just been a lot of turmoil at the DEA really throughout the course of, during this time that fentanyl was really increasing. It was only until last year that the DEA finally had a Senate-confirmed leader. Before that, they had 5 acting administrators. Hundreds of agents and staffers left the agency. There have been a series of corruption scandals, but also the DEA, like many federal agencies, is really struggling with recruitment and retention. A lot of experienced agents have left, and they're behind, and they know they're behind. They say they're doing more to try to bring in new agents. But, again, the agency, in the face of this very, very big challenge, hasn't been able to meet it. So that's one of the institutional failures we outline in our series.
And did you get a sense from your reporting about ways that this current administration can address this issue? Are they starting to meet the challenges?
Yeah, I mean, their strategy today, I do think we've seen a renewed effort recently. They're trying to detect more fentanyl at the border by increasing scanning technology. There's a greater focus on the 2 Mexican cartels that are responsible for the vast majority of fentanyl trafficking. But relations with Mexico remain strained, particularly on this drug partnership. And then on the health front, I think there's a real desire to make more treatment available. There's new grant money But all of these institutions are essentially playing catch up. And what we've seen is just the number of fatal overdoses has soared, particularly since the pandemic. I'll just give you one stat. Since 2019, fatal overdoses from fentanyl in the United States are up 94%. So it's very hard for the government to catch up to an incredible wave like that.
Yeah, that's absolutely striking. I mean, being on Capitol Hill, too, you hear lawmakers, talk about this and the need to address it. Many Republicans are talking about border security, but I know in your reporting, you kind of get to the fact that that doesn't necessarily address the issue when lawmakers are talking about building a wall. What's kind of gone wrong there at the border in terms of how people are addressing it policy-wise?
Well, one of the missteps we outline is that during the last administration, the government spent $11 billion on the border wall, but a wall is virtually useless for stopping fentanyl trafficking because the vast majority of this illegal fentanyl that's being smuggled by the cartels is coming through passenger vehicles and trucks right through the official ports of entry. So it's a question of detection and of scanning. And the federal government is years behind its efforts to ramp up the kind of sophisticated scanning technology needed in order to detect more of this fentanyl. So the Biden administration has rolled out new scanners in a lot of places years after it was supposed to. So it's playing catch up. But again, a border wall is not very useful for stopping something that is coming in trucks and passenger vehicles.
All right, that's important to consider as Capitol Hill grapples with this as well. Nick Miroff, thank you for your reporting, and we'll look forward to future installments. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Anytime.